Hi, this is Paula. I just had to come on here and share a fun little miracle that God did for our family recently. It was just too good not to share because not only was it funny, but it was just life-saving. So, several weeks ago, Keith, my husband, started having chest pains. Long story short, right? Went to the doctor, sent him to the ER, put him in an ambulance, sent him to the hospital, right? And before you knew it, he was having to have open heart surgery. We were not expecting that. It was a blow. We were blindsided, and this is not the way we had planned to spend our month or a couple months. And well, worse than that was, just all the feelings that started coming up for me was really hard. It was really hard because I was having flashbacks and feeling the same feelings that I had when my dad went through this 3 times, starting when I was in 6th grade. And I remember what that ordeal was like. I remember what it was like for him, what it was like for the family. I just remember him almost dying. I knew the risks involved. I knew it was very dangerous, and I knew it was going to be very painful, and it was going to be a long recovery. And I also knew that it could cause open heart surgery has a high incidence of depression and personality changes and all that goes along with that afterwards, which is really interesting and makes sense that it involves your heart. Your physical actually does affect your soul. So I was just I knew what was coming. I knew what was coming, and I wasn't looking forward to it. But Keith and I were talking, and we're just like, okay, right? God has something for us through this, and we've just got to be expectant that something good He's going to use this to bring something good. And along the way, we may get an upgrade, become a little more Christ-like, right? That would be awesome. So we were really trying to prepare ourselves before this to go through this. But nevertheless, it was a very, very difficult time and just kind of a roller coaster of emotions. But there was so much good that was through it as well. And this video is just going to be about one of the good things that was in there. There were actually multiple awesome times within that dark time that happened where just people showed up and the encouragement and just little miracles, little gifts from God that were awesome. Okay, now this is one of them. Okay, so let's get to surgery day. Okay, surgery day, that's a hard day, right? That was very hard. You say goodbye and you don't know if it's going to be the last time you say goodbye. Is this goodbye for good, or is this goodbye for a few hours, right? You don't know. That was very hard, right? And I was like, am I losing my best friend? Am I losing my other half, someone I've been with for over 36 years? So it was hard. It was hard. So he goes into the surgery, or waiting in the waiting room, and then it's over, and the surgeon comes in to update us on how the surgery went. And he's like, well, I've got some good news. We were able to save Keith's guitar playing arm. And my mother-in-law, my mother and father-in-law were waiting with me in the waiting room. My mother-in-law looked at each other like, guitar playing arm? Okay. All right, that's okay. The surgeon said, yeah, right before we took him back, he requested that we not use the artery out of his left arm because he plays guitar and he doesn't want us to use that one. So, right, we're like, oh, okay, all right, great, fine, right? It's like, I'm thinking, well, he better start playing guitar a lot more often now that he made that special request in a life or death situation, right? It was not like him. It was not like him because he would just be like, hey, doc, whatever you think is best, right? You're the doctor, whatever artery you need to take, that's great. But apparently, saving his guitar playing arm was important to him. So their standard protocol, what they had planned to do before the surgery, was to use one chest artery and the other artery from his left arm. The right arm was ruled out because it wasn't the right type of vein, so they had artery, so they had to rule that one out. So their first choice was his left arm, and then the second choice would be a vein out of one of his legs. So his arms were prepped and his legs were prepped for that surgery. So that's what we were expecting. One artery out of the chest and the artery out of his arm or vein in his leg. So apparently they were able to use 2 arteries, both out of the chest. And the surgeon said that worked out great because normally we're not able to do that. Most people can't use both arteries out of their chests for various reasons, whether it's diabetes or it's just not long enough to go past all of the blockages. But normally it's not their protocol to use both arteries out of the chest. So that evening I go home and of course I start Googling, the different types of arteries and veins that are used for heart bypasses and all of that. And I came across something pretty stunning, pretty amazing. And I realized I am reading that the absolute best arteries to use for heart bypasses are the mammary arteries in your chest. They are the gold standard for heart bypasses. There is no other artery or vein in the body that gives as good of results as those mammary arteries in the chest. So the fact that they used both of those was just amazing, because they are the gold standard because they are not as prone to getting clogged up again. Veins in your body are way more prone to getting just clogged up once again, and then you have to have bypass surgery again. Or worse, you might have a heart attack later on, or worse. But again, it's not standard protocol, especially with this surgeon or this hospital, to use both arteries because, again, for most people, they're just unable to, and they just rule that out kind of ahead of time and plan for the arm or the leg. So I was just, wow, that's pretty amazing. That's pretty amazing. They were able to use those 2 gold standard arteries that are way more likely to be healthy and give Keith the best chance of life and living for many more years. So then when Keith wakes up and I'm filling him in on what the surgeon told me, I said, hey, good news. The surgeon was able to save your left guitar playing arm just like you requested. And you know what? He said, I do not remember requesting that. I do not remember anything about that. He did not remember saying that or requesting that or saying anything at all about playing the guitar and needing his arm saved for playing the guitar. So I was just like blown away. I was like, oh my goodness, that was God speaking through Keith to make sure he got the best possible equipment to fix his heart. He was looking out for him in a pretty funny way, I'll have to say, this guitar playing arm, right? Really? But then, okay, so then he's like, okay, that was a miracle. That was just amazing. But then you start to doubt a little bit. Well, maybe they were planning to check both arteries and, the arm was after that, or, you start doubting, right? But then it was confirmed 2 or 3 more times by talking to surgeons after that. And the funniest one was when the nurse came in his hospital room, and he starts giving us this big long spiel about how he's going to be really careful with his diet now, low salt, low fat, blah, 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 because veins are really prone to clogging up again. They're just really prone to that, so you have to be extra careful what you eat because, they're just going to clog up again and give you trouble again, and you're going to be here again. And he's going on and on about the downside of veins. And I was like, wait a minute. They didn't use any veins for the bypasses. They used 2 arteries. And the nurse didn't believe me. Now, obviously, Keith had nothing on his arms, so it was obvious that they hadn't cut into his arms and used those arm arteries. So the nurse was assuming that they had used a vein out of his leg. He was so sure of it, he goes, yeah, look, and he goes and he flips up Keith's hospital gown, just flips it up without, flip it up. And he's like, and then he's looking and, there was no incisions on either of his legs. His legs were both fine. There was nothing taken out of his legs, like I knew, right? But the nurse didn't believe and had to flip it up and check. So then he was like, whoa, well, okay, never mind. So he was so sure that that was the protocol. It was going to be an arm. It obviously wasn't the arm because he didn't see anything there. So it must be the leg. So he flipped the gown up to check there. Nothing there. So then he's like, well, okay, I guess I did use both arteries from the chest. So it was just a little gift that God gave us as encouragement. And like when I think of that, like it makes me laugh. It makes me laugh that God did a miracle in that way and used something as funny as, hey, can you please save my guitar playing arm, to get the best possible job, the best possible fix, so that he's going to be good now. He's going to be good now for a good long time. His heart is good as new. So I just wanted to share that because that was pretty funny and it just showed the goodness of God in every detail of your life. So that's our story. All right, talk to you later.